Every physical construction project is built on law before it ever touches the soil. Long before the first excavator arrives on site, a governing framework must be drafted and approved. Law is a system of rules created and enforced by social and governmental institutions to regulate human behavior. We require this rule system to establish order, guarantee predictability, and resolve conflicts. This structure allows participants to commit resources without the constant threat of uncompensated loss. Approaching construction from first principles, we start with a bedrock axiom. Any complex human interaction requires a governing framework to function. Delivering a massive physical asset forces a highly fractured ecosystem of independent clients, architects, and engineers to operate as a single unit. Each discipline brings its own competing financial interests to the table. Coordination at this scale relies on a shared set of protocols. Without a legal structure to enforce them, the organizational effort fragments, usually leading to project abandonment or insolvency. The scale of modern construction involves massive capital investment and extreme physical risk. Looking at the King Shaka International Airport Terminal, we see millions of interwoven components and thousands of labor hours materialized into a single functional asset. Producing something of this magnitude relies entirely on a fragmented supply chain of specialists, subcontractors, and suppliers. The mechanism that forces these disparate entities into the synchrony required to deliver the project is the law. Construction contracts function as deterministic control systems. They establish the logic gate for every action taken on the project. They dictate strict protocols for managing scope, tracking time, controlling costs, and verifying quality. The contract acts as the algorithm converting raw capital into built infrastructure through the binding force of legal obligation. Creating this order requires legally defining the entire ecosystem of stakeholders and arranging them into a strict hierarchy. For public sector projects in South Africa, this hierarchy originates from Section 217 of the Constitution, which mandates that all procurement must be fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. This constitutional mandate cascades into the formal appointment of professionals like the architect. Rule 6 of the Architectural Profession Act establishes their baseline scope, defining their legal duties regarding public interest and environmental protection. Simultaneously, the employer uses this legal authority to officially appoint a principal contractor, transferring the responsibility for physical execution onto a distinct legal entity. To manage this relationship, a principal consultant is appointed to administer the services of all other consultants, acting as the central node for project communication and control. The law even draws a definitive boundary between project stakeholders and the public, defined as anyone whose environment or health could be affected by the construction activities. Before a single shovel breaks ground, the client has constructed a network of legally binding nodes that dictate exactly who holds authority over every subsequent physical action. With the hierarchy established, the contract deploys specific control mechanisms to govern the physical boundaries and the schedule. The formal issuance of approved construction drawings legally defines the physical parameters of the works. Anything outside those lines is unauthorized. Time is regulated with equal precision. The project manager grants the contractor physical access to the site only on a specific, contractually defined date, which is strictly contingent on the approval of their submitted program. If the physical requirements change, variations are processed through rigorous procedures to ensure that new scope is priced and approved before the work occurs. Time and scope function as rigid parameters, ensuring the client knows exactly what physical actions are authorized and exactly when they will be completed. Managing the physical build requires managing the financial flow. This is executed by the cost consultant, who measures the physical progress on site against the agreed rates in the bill of quantities. A payment certificate represents a formal, legally binding declaration of the actual value of work performed to date. Through these monthly progress claims, the contract systematically transforms verified physical labor and materials into liquid capital. Once the certificate is issued, the employer is legally obligated to transfer those certified funds to the contractor within a strictly prescribed time period. The contract is the mechanism that keeps the fragmented supply chain solvent, reliably converting stacked bricks into circulating cash. Beyond time and money, construction involves hazardous physical environments. The legal framework assigns responsibility for these risks before they are ever encountered. Under the 2014 Occupational Health and Safety Construction Regulations, site safety risk is specifically assigned to competent persons, mandating that a stirred construction manager takes legal responsibility for the physical construction processes. The regulations explicitly require all practical steps to prevent uncontrolled collapse during temporary states of weakness, utilizing defined systems like shoring to support excavations and vulnerable structures. Once complete, the owner of the structure assumes the legal duty to ensure periodic inspections are carried out by competent persons to render the building safe for continued use. The law isolates the individuals who will bear both the financial penalties and the criminal liability if the physical structure fails. When these legal obligations are left ambiguous or poorly drafted, the project naturally descends into entropy. If quality standards are undefined in the specifications, the contractual mechanisms for identifying and correcting defects break down. Allowing unmanaged variations to bypass the formal approval process inevitably shatters the agreed timeline and exhausts the control budget. Without a functioning control system, the entire endeavor collapses into financial distress, stalling the physical work and plunging the stakeholders into destructive litigation. Project failure is frequently the result of undefined legal boundaries rather than structural engineering errors. Looking at a successfully completed facility, the physical achievement is obvious. The completed structure is supported by a network of contracts, regulations, and statutory acts transmitting data, routing money, and transferring liability between every participant. These agreements operate as proactive management tools, keeping scope, time, cost, quality, and risk in a constant state of equilibrium. From the initial appointment of the architect to the final release of retention funds, every physical and financial action on a project is authorized by a prior legal mechanism. You cannot effectively manage the physical variables of a site without first locking down the legal variables that govern the people doing the work. To explore exactly how standard form contracts like the NEC, FIDIC, and JBCC structure these rules, make sure to subscribe, because before any building rises into the skyline, there must first be agreement on the ground.